June had agreed to dinner only because it wasn't a date. The problem started when Dana showed up looking like she had every intention of proving her wrong. This is an original fictional story. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental. By 7:15, Quinn Gallery was closed, the lights were down to evening mode, and June Morales was already regretting several things. The first was saying yes. The second was saying yes without forcing Dana to define what kind of dinner this was. The third was allowing herself to stand behind the front desk in a black blouse and fitted trousers that were significantly less practical than her usual after-hours clothes, while pretending she had not, in fact, changed earrings twice. She was stacking receipts into a neat pile when the door opened. Dana stepped in like she belonged everywhere and asked permission nowhere. Dark silk blouse, tailored trousers, hair loose but polished. The kind of expensive calm that made ordinary people suddenly aware of their own lighting. June didn't look up right away. That was strategic. Still open? Dana asked. June slid the last receipt into place and lifted her eyes. You're here after closing. That feels like you already knew the answer. Dana smiled. Good evening to you too. June came out from behind the desk with her bag in one hand and the gallery keys in the other. You're 3 minutes early. Impressive, Dana said. I didn't realize I was being timed. You were. And now I know punctuality is one of your less annoying qualities. Dana's smile widened. Less annoying. Don't get attached to praise. It makes people lazy. Dana stepped a little closer. You did come. June locked the front door, checked it once, then twice, because being emotionally compromised was not a valid reason to fail at security. I said I would. Yes, Dana said. You did. There was something in the way she said it that made it sound less like a scheduling fact and more like June had done her some kind of favor. June didn't care for that tone. Not because she disliked it. Because she did not trust the part of herself that noticed it. She turned and headed toward the sidewalk. Let's go. Dana followed. Still not a date? June kept walking. You're very committed to making me repeat that. I just admire discipline. June glanced sideways. No, you admire pressure. Dana looked delighted. That too. The car waiting at the curb was black, quiet, and very clearly not borrowed. June stopped beside it and looked at Dana. You brought a driver? Dana glanced toward the front. Do you want me to send him away and create a less elegant logistical problem? June considered that. No. Then excellent. The door was opened for her before she could protest further, which was irritating for 2 reasons. 1, it was unnecessary. 2, she still got in. Dana slid into the seat beside her and gave the driver an address. June heard the neighborhood and looked out the window before Dana could catch the reaction. Expensive, she said. Dana leaned back. I assumed you'd survive it. I usually do. You sound tired. June turned her head. I spent the last week helping Iris turn a gallery into a vow and a floral arrangement into a power struggle. Dana laughed softly. Fair. For a few blocks, neither of them spoke. The city moved around them in streaks of light and glass. June kept her attention fixed on the window for as long as possible, mostly because she could feel Dana looking at her without being obvious about it. It wasn't aggressive. Dana didn't do aggressive. She did something worse. Interested. June finally turned. If you keep staring, I'm going back to the gallery on principle. Dana's expression stayed innocent. I wasn't staring. You were. I was observing. June looked out the window again and muttered, You and Claire really have infected each other. Dana laughed. That was the thing with Dana. Her laugh wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was warm, low, and just amused enough to suggest she had long ago decided life was more bearable if everyone stopped pretending. It was, unfortunately, an attractive quality. June disliked that very much. The restaurant was, predictably, beautiful. Not loud beautiful. Worse. Controlled beautiful. Soft amber lighting. Dark wood. Quiet corners. Tables placed at exactly the right distance for privacy without isolation. The kind of place where the napkins had opinions and the staff looked like they had been hired for discretion and cheekbones. June stopped just inside and took one slow look around. Dana watched her. Too much. June handed off her coat and said, This is the kind of place where the lighting has opinions. Dana's mouth curved. You say that like you disapprove. I say that like I expect tiny portions and emotional invoices. That got a real laugh out of Dana, one that made the hostess smile despite herself while leading them to a corner table. June sat and took in the room with the air of a woman gathering evidence for later. Dana folded her hands over the menu and watched her do it. You do that a lot. Do what? Act like the room needs to earn your respect. June looked up. Most rooms do. Dana tilted her head. And this one? June considered the lighting, the wine list, the sheer level of self-regard in the architecture. Still under review. Dana smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The waiter came. They ordered wine. Dana ordered with the ease of someone who had spent years in restaurants that treated hesitation like a social defect. June ordered like someone who refused to be impressed by performance, even when the performance was good. When they were finally alone again, June set down her menu and said, So. Dana lifted one brow. So. You asked me to dinner. I did. You were suspiciously persistent about it. I was. June picked up her glass of water. Why? Dana didn't answer immediately. That was new. June had expected something polished. Something flirtatious. Something Dana-like. Instead, Dana sat back and looked at her with an honesty so unadorned it was almost more intimate than a line would have been. Because you never try to impress me. June blinked once. Dana went on, calmer now. You don't hover. You don't flatter. You don't perform interest just to make a room easier. You look at me like I'm a person, which is surprisingly rare in circles where everyone is technically being charming. June lifted her glass, partly to buy a second of time. You say that like being looked at as a person is some rare art form. For me, Dana said. Sometimes. That landed harder than June wanted it to. She put the glass down carefully. You could have invited any number of women who actually enjoy places like this. Dana smiled faintly. You say that like you're not enjoying it. I didn't say that. No, Dana agreed. You just stopped insulting the lighting. June narrowed her eyes. That's because I'm conserving energy. Dana laughed softly again. The wine arrived. Dana poured. June noticed, against her will, that Dana didn't overdo anything. No showy little gestures. No trying to impress. Just ease. That, more than overt flirtation, was what made her dangerous. For a while, dinner moved the way good evenings sometimes do when neither person is trying too hard to force meaning into them. The food was good. The wine was better. The conversation, annoyingly, was excellent. Dana asked June whether she had always been so intolerant of inefficiency. June answered, no. I worked my way up. June asked Dana whether she was ever off. Dana said, only in rooms I trust. June replied, that sounds exhausting. It can be. At one point Dana asked, do you like working at the gallery? June leaned back and looked at her over her glass. That's a suspiciously sincere question. I contain multitudes. That remains unproven. Dana smiled. Try me. June let the pause stretch. I like that it's real. If something works, you feel it. If it doesn't, there's nowhere to hide. She picked at the stem of her glass with one finger. And iris is impossible, but in a focused way. Dana laughed. That's very generous of you. It was not meant to be generous. No, I know. June hesitated, then added, I like that what people do there actually matters to them. That's rarer than people pretend. Dana watched her differently after that. Less amused. Not less interested. Just less lazy with it. What? June asked. Dana tipped her head. Nothing. You look like you had a thought. I did. And Dana looked down at her wine once, then back up. I think you say more than you mean to when you care about something. June stared at her, then said, that was an ambush. No, Dana said. That was an observation. June made a face. You and Claire really are a public health issue. Dana smiled into her glass. Dinner should have become easier after that, but somehow it became more charged instead. Not because either of them did anything obvious. Because neither of them needed to anymore. June stopped feeling like she had to swat away every line. Dana stopped filling every silence on purpose. The whole evening shifted into something quieter and much more dangerous. By the time the plates were cleared, June had learned 3 things she had not expected to learn. First, Dana was funny without trying. Second, Dana was much less impressed with her own social world than most people assumed. Third, being looked at across candlelight by a woman who had clearly decided you were worth her full attention was a deeply inconvenient experience. The waiter drifted away. June leaned back and said, "You're less exhausting when you're not performing." Dana's mouth curved slowly. "That may be the nicest thing you've said to me all evening." It wasn't nice. No. But it was honest. June looked out toward the room for a second, then back at her. "Do you perform a lot?" Dana turned the stem of her wine glass between two fingers. "Enough. That sounds like too much." "It often is." June waited. Dana met her eyes and, for the first time that evening, let the answer come without polish. "Most people like me better when I'm easy to be around," she said. "Interesting, charming, useful, decorative, whatever the room needs. You are one of very few people who seem actively suspicious of all of that." June's brows lifted. "That's because I am." Dana laughed under her breath. "I know." Something in June softened before she could stop it. Not visibly, she hoped, but enough that Dana saw it anyway. Of course she did. Dana sat forward slightly. "Can I ask you something?" "You usually do." "Why did you actually say yes?" June looked down at the tablecloth once. She could have lied. She nearly did. Then she looked back up and answered with the only version of the truth she knew how to survive. "Because you're exhausting," she said. "But not boring." Dana's expression changed. Very slightly. "Enough." June went on before she could lose the advantage. "And because I wanted to see what you sounded like when nobody was rewarding you for being charming." For 1 second, Dana just looked at her. Then she smiled in a way that was less polished and much more real than anything she had done all evening. "Well," she said softly, "that's deeply dangerous of you." June reached for her glass. "I've been told." When they finally left the restaurant, the city had gone fully dark around them. The air was cooler now, the sidewalks reflecting light in broken lines. Dana declined the waiting car without discussion, told the driver to take the long way back, and looked at June. "Walk." June considered pretending she had another commitment, another errand, another reason not to stretch the night. Instead she said, "Fine. But if this turns into a scenic monologue, I'm leaving." Dana's smile was immediate. "You always assume the worst of me." "No," June said. "I assume the most." They walked without hurrying. That, too, felt unlike a date in the most suspicious possible way. No one touched. No one rushed. No one said anything they couldn't take back. Which somehow made every small thing matter more. The brush of Dana's shoulder when someone passed too close. The way June noticed when the heel of Dana's shoe caught on a crack and she recovered without breaking stride. The silence that kept falling between them and somehow not needing rescue. They stopped at a corner under a streetlight while a line of cars moved past in soft, expensive blurs. Dana put her hands in the pockets of her coat and looked at June in a way that made the whole city feel less relevant than it should have. "You spent the entire evening insisting this wasn't a date." June lifted one brow. "And?" Dana's mouth moved slightly. "You stayed." June looked at her. There it was again. That exact thing she had been trying not to admit all evening. Dana wasn't pushing. Wasn't claiming victory. Wasn't even flirting, not really. She was just saying the quiet part aloud. June crossed one arm over herself and said, "You say that like I had so many opportunities to escape." Dana glanced toward the street. "For someone so committed to saying no, you never once asked me to take you home early." That did it. Not because the line was devastating. Because it was true. June let the silence sit between them for one beat. Then two. Dana didn't fill it. Good. That, more than anything, was probably why June stepped closer. Dana's eyes dropped to her mouth and came back up again. That should have been enough warning for both of them. It wasn't. June looked at her and said, very softly, "You talk too much." Then she kissed her. Not long. Not hesitant either. Just enough to erase the question of whether the evening had been anything at all. Dana made a quiet sound against her mouth, surprised, pleased, entirely too satisfied, and when June pulled back, Dana stayed close enough that the next breath belonged to both of them. For one dangerous second, neither spoke. Then Dana, still smiling in that low, private way, said, "So this wasn't a date?" June stared at her. Then, because she had already gone this far and dignity was now a flexible concept, said, "Don't ruin it." Dana actually laughed. Not loudly. Not smugly. Warmly. It did terrible things to the atmosphere. June should have stepped back then. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was, looking at Dana under the streetlight, aware in a very immediate way of the city around them, and the woman in front of her, and the fact that there were some evenings a person did not need to define in order to keep them. Dana looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Quieter now. You know, for someone who works a front desk, you're unexpectedly hard to read." June's mouth twitched. "That's because I respect privacy. Is that what this is?" June looked at her. "Do you need it labeled tonight?" Dana's eyes softened. "No," she said. "Not tonight." That answer settled everything. June let out a breath she had not realized she'd been holding. Good, she thought. Because I'm not giving her a category. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Maybe that wasn't even the point. Dana lifted one hand and touched, very lightly, the edge of June's jaw. A question. Not an assumption. June let her. That was answer enough. The second kiss was slower. Not hungrier. Not bigger. Just more certain. When it ended, June stepped back first because someone had to preserve at least the illusion of good judgment. Dana watched her do it and smiled like she had discovered something she had been hoping for and was gracious enough not to gloat over. June narrowed her eyes. "If you look too pleased with yourself, I'm taking back the evening." Dana's smile only deepened. "You can try." June shook her head and looked down the block, where the city stretched on in light and dark and all the private lives hidden behind it. "This was still not a date," she said. Dana stepped up beside her, shoulder almost brushing hers again. "Of course." June turned to look at her. "You're lying." "Yes." That was so clean, so Dana, so free of apology, that June laughed despite herself. Unbelievable. And yet, June made a face. "Absolutely not. Don't start sounding like Claire." Dana looked offended. "I have much better timing." That got another laugh out of her, and June immediately regretted letting Dana hear how easy it came. They stood there for one more minute without saying much. The night around them was cool and bright, the kind of city night that made things feel sharper without making them feel grander. No promises. No dramatic future. No one pretending one kiss had rewritten the world. That was what made it good. It didn't need rewriting. It only needed to be exactly what it was. When the car finally pulled up again, Dana opened the door and looked at June across the roof. June lifted a brow. "What?" Dana's voice was lower now. Less amused. More exact. "I'm very glad you said yes." That landed much harder than it had any right to. June slid into the car before it could show on her face. Dana got in after her, and neither of them spoke much on the ride back. They didn't have to. Outside June's building, the car stopped at the curb. The windows above were dark, the street quieter now, the late-night city reflecting in soft streaks across the glass. June reached for the handle, then paused and looked back at Dana. Dana met her eyes and waited. That, June thought, might be the most dangerous thing about her. She knew how to wait without making it feel like pressure. June opened the door, stepped out, then bent slightly and looked back in. "For the record," she said, "you were still exhausting." Dana smiled, slower this time. "And you still came." June shut the door before she could answer. She stood on the sidewalk and watched the car pull away, one hand still curled around her bag strap, mouth still remembering the shape of something she had absolutely not been planning to do at 7:15 that evening. Then she turned, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside just long enough to stand in the quiet dark and laugh once under her breath at herself. No, she thought, setting her bag down by the door. This had not solved anything. It had only made things more interesting. Which, irritatingly enough, was not the same thing as a problem. And that was all right. For one night, that was enough. And if this story stayed with you, if you liked the tension, the wit, and the kind of chemistry that never needed to shout, subscribe, because there are always more stories waiting. More dangerous women stepping into the wrong rooms, and more nights that change everything before either person is ready.